last minute changes.
Just adding people. Behind me, please. Yeah, for sure. Are these all on? This one is not. See, Dave, there's a thing here that says reminder, turn the microphone on. All right. Thank you all for being here today. Up here with me today is Attorney General Drew Wrigley, Senate Majority Leader David Hogue, House Majority Leader Mike LaFleur, Representative Pat Heiner, Senator Michelle Axman, Mark Hardy, the Executive Director of the North Dakota Board of Pharmacy, and State Health Officer Sherry Adams. And I just want to say thank you to everybody up here for your past and continued leadership on this issue. We're here today because people are overdosing and dying from a product that you can buy off the shelf in a convenience store in North Dakota without any regulation or age restriction. Till 3 weeks ago, I have never heard of Kratom. But at least 10 states have banned it, and today North Dakota joins that list for the safety and well-being of our citizens and our kids. We'll get into more detail about the drug and its risks in a minute, but I don't want to bury the lead. So here are the 3 executive actions we're taking today. First, this morning I signed an emergency letter for an emergency rule issued by the North Dakota Pharmacy to classify 7-OH, a highly potent synthetic derivative of Kratom, as a Schedule I controlled substance as of August 5th, 2026. This action is consistent with a notice of intent filed by the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration on July 1st to place 7-OH and 3 related substances into Schedule I. The DEA says its temporary scheduling order will take effect on or after this Wednesday, August 5th, and will remain in effect for at least 2 years. This puts 7-OH on the same schedule as LSD and heroin, drugs with a high potential for abuse and no accepted legitimate medical use in the United States. The Board of Pharmacy's order is valid for 180 days, and it triggers an emergency administrative rulemaking process. Second, I am issuing an executive order declaring a public health emergency and prohibiting the sale, use, and possession of all Kratom and Kratom products in North Dakota, effective at the same time, 5 p.m. Wednesday, August 5th. Per statute, this emergency order is effective for 30 days. This includes 7-OH and the main psychoactive substances found in Kratom called midodrine. Right now, it's the Wild West when it comes to Kratom sales in North Dakota. There are no regulations, no age restrictions, no labeling requirements, and quite simply no accountability. We're taking emergency action to press pause and get these products off the shelves until the legislature can address this, which brings me to point 3. In the same executive order, after discussion with legislative leadership, I am convening the legislature in special session on September 7th to consider enacting the emergency rule on 7-OH and prohibition on Kratom into state law to address the enforcement authority. While state law allows me to issue a 30-day ban and work with the Board of Pharmacy to add 7-OH to Schedule I, the one thing we can't do with executive orders is create felonies. I'm asking the legislature to come back to make that enforcement authority clear. I was here in 2013 when we wrote the derivative laws to bath salts. What we had found at that time is when you change one single molecule of something, you got to wait until the legislature comes back in to add those to Schedule I. And so we're working with, at that time, Attorney General Wayne Stenjone, several states' attorneys and law enforcement across the state. We figured out a way where we could allow the AG and the pharmacy board to add derivatives to existing Schedule I drugs. This is different. This isn't a derivative anything. We're putting Kratom into a Schedule I. that hasn't existed before. The DEA order is great, but our local law enforcement doesn't enforce federal law. And quite frankly, Drew and I both know that federal law enforcement isn't going to be the primary source of arrests or enforcement when it comes into these things. And if we wait until the full session comes into place to do this, everybody asks me this question: why don't you just wait? Because they're going to be back in January. But it's not really 5 months; it's a year. Laws don't go into effect that don't have money in them until August 1st. This is quite frankly too important to wait that long. So to provide a little background, kratom is a tropical tree native to Southeast Asia. Its leaves are crushed and then smoked, brewed with tea, or placed in gel capsules. In low doses, the drug produces stimulant effects. In high doses, it has sedative effects very similar to opiates. Abuse of kratom has increased in recent years. In the U.S., kratom can lead to both psychological and physiological addiction. In some cases, it's been reported to cause hallucinations, delusion, and confusion. What's more concerning is 7-OH. This substance occurs naturally in trace amounts in kratom leaves, but manufacturers have created a synthetic form that is highly concentrated, addictive, and potentially fatal, and it's sold right here in North Dakota. You can find 7-OH products in gas stations, convenience stores, smoke shops, all across the state. Again, there are no regulations or no age restrictions on this product. Like opioids, these products are very addictive and deadly. Since 2019, North Dakota has reports of 50 deaths associated with kratoms, 7-OH, or other kratom derivatives. In 23 of those 50 cases, these substances were listed as part of the primary cause of death, meaning the medical examiner or certifying physician determined that the drug's effects contributed to the fatal toxicity, whether alone or in combination with something else. If you look at calls from North Dakota to the Poison Control Center in Minnesota, with whom we contract, the calls related to kratom have increased dramatically from 5 in 2023, 22 in 2025, and 18 calls already this year. In addition, there have been 5 calls this year specifically about 7-OH, up from just 1 last year. This isn't a new topic in North Dakota. 2 bills were introduced during the 2025 legislative session aimed at regulating kratom. Unfortunately, and I think because most of us didn't actually know what it was, both of those failed. One was turned into a potential interim legislative study. Which brings us to today. Across the country, states continue to take action to regulate or outright ban kratom and or 7-OH. 10 states have banned kratom, and more than half of the 50 states have outlawed or put limits on 7-OH. 9 states currently have proposals to schedule 7-OH, and 6 states have bills to limit 7-OH. The DEA Administrator Terrence Cole said synthetic 7-OH products pose a growing health threat to public safety and health. And the FDA has suggested that they are the next wave of opioid crisis, calling for immediate and impactful policies to educate consumers and take regulatory action limiting access to 7-OH. The Department of Defense has also banned the use of kratom by service members to protect their health, safety, and military readiness. In North Dakota, we've seen several individual communities taking action, working to enact restrictions to curb access to kratom and adopting resolutions addressing the risk. Local public health units also are actively educating community members, youth, and young adults on the risks of kratom use, and our Behavioral Health Division is supporting prevention efforts. The timing of our executive action today is driven largely by the DEA's temporary order, which will add 7-OH as a Schedule I controlled substance on August 5th. Already we've seen news reports online about retailers holding sales as the DEA deadline looms. They're reducing prices to get rid of the 7-OH they will soon be banned from selling, and consumers are stockpiling it while they can. While the DEA order will make 7-OH products illegal on the federal level, we know that local prosecutors rely on North Dakota law when they're making their charging decisions. We want to make sure our state law is consistent with federal law, and we give local law enforcement all the tools they need to actually enforce what we are doing. We know there will be questions about why we're banning kratom products altogether and not just addressing 7-OH like the feds. The top concern is that by banning synthetic 7-OH, more people will turn to naturally occurring kratom and will simply take more to get the same effect. The problem, according to our health experts, is these products can be just as addictive as 7-OH and still lead to long-term health problems and potential overdose. We also know that some will say that taking small doses of kratom for pain management is an alternative to opioids, and that it's not a risk. But again, with kratom, you don't know what you're getting because there's absolutely no regulation. The packaging is also very bright and colorful, and almost like it's being marketed to kids and young adults, who, by the way, can legally purchase these products because there is simply no age restriction. Another reason for concern beyond 7-OH is that the manufacturers have shown an ability and willingness to skirt bans on specific synthetics by simply changing molecules here or there and calling it something else. We saw this with basalt, synthetic marijuana. It's common practice. So unless you ban all kratom, as 10 other states have done, both red and blue states, and others are proposing, you're leaving the door open to these highly concentrated, highly addictive synthetic products. I take these executive actions seriously because as a former legislator, I understand that crafting laws is not my job, it is the legislature's. That's why I'm calling them into special session to ensure that our authority to enforce kratom rules and regulations is crystal clear. After the changes to state law following COVID, there's a process where the governor declares a health emergency and the legislature can ask the governor to call a special session. I'm not going to make them do that or force them to call themselves in. I'm going to call them in to deal with this because it's the right thing to do and it's the right time to do it. Now I'd like to welcome the Attorney General to provide a few law enforcement perspective on what they're seeing on the streets and what they're trying to accomplish here.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Governor. To all up here, thanks to all of you for working on this important matter, for being here today. We appreciate this opportunity. I also want to recognize some folks we've got here from the Attorney General's office. Most pointedly, I want to acknowledge the folks from the North Dakota Crime Lab. We've got at least two here. Jen Penner, our director, is here, and Shara Rittenbach, she's a forensic scientist, but also the forensic chemical unit lead. I'm going to give them tremendous credit for alerting us to the dangers of these products, and bringing these matters squarely into the focus of myself and then the governor. In the middle of a meeting that I had with them, I started to text the governor, and we've kind of gone from there. We appreciate that very much. As the governor said, kratom remains today, before the actions being taken by our governor, it remains unregulated. It is readily available in smoke shops, in gas stations, vape stores, and other retail outlets all across the state of North Dakota. It's frequently sold in colorful packaging, which I'm going to get to in a little bit here. I did a little undercover work. I was dressed exactly like this. I went as the Attorney General, and did have quite an interaction that Senator Hogan and I were just discussing before we came up here today. These companies are profiting from these products, and they know precisely what they are selling. They understand the powerful mind, mood, and body altering effects of the kratom-related products that they are moving across countertops all across North Dakota. Yet they've saturated the marketplace, and they've done so in places where children have the ability to walk in and buy it legally and have those very same effects. This announcement being made today sparks an important public health communication effort that is aimed at ensuring that North Dakotans of all ages understand the dangers of these products, and they are protected from them in meaningful ways. At the same time, we are launching a regulatory public safety response that is merited by this looming public health crisis. These products must be treated in a manner consistent with the risks that they pose to our communities and to our people. The addictive, dangerous, and deadly qualities of kratom can no longer be ignored. Today, I'd like to show you some of the products that I personally purchased. Director Gabrowska from the BCI authorized all these tactics. He's here today. I can't sit still that long. We were having a meeting on this, the Chief Deputy and I and some others. Governor, this is my part of this. Thank you, Governor. Yeah, I'm not going to open them. These are legal for the time being, but they're about to be something. I'm going to hand them off to Dora here, and he'll have them after this week. But I walked into one of the retail facilities. I left that meeting. I went, took 5 minutes, got to the store, walked in exactly like this, two gentlemen standing there. I walked up to the counter. I looked at one of them and said, "I'm looking for kratom." He asked me, what dose are you taking? I said, "I'm not." And he looked right at me and said, "Don't." He said, "This shit is nasty." And I kind of looked at him and I said, "Well," I said, "where is it?" And he showed me the countertop, and it was about 10, 15 feet long, 3 high, two widths of this deep, packed, thousands and thousands of these. And I looked at them and I said, "There's quite an array." We've got Spearmint Galaxy 3-pack.
Fucking 7OH.
It says that you're supposed to cut the tablets in half.
Yep.
I said to him, "You know that they don't, right?" He nods his head. I looked on the back, I read the directives. It all sounds more like a child's candy than anything else. Here we've got strawberry and cream. This one also a 60 milligram tablet you're supposed to cut in half. This one, this is my favorite. This is, not because I tried it. This is Zauer Z, it's called. 500 milligrams total, 5 tablets. These are supposed to be cut into fourths, it says, but they had the expiration date. Senator Hogan and I were noticing the expiration date was cut off the back. Now, I don't think the most dangerous thing about this is that it's out of date. When I continued my conversation with this young man, both of them actually, I said, "You know, the kids can get these in the state of North Dakota." The second guy chirps in, he said, "You're not buying that for kids." I said, "I could though." He said, "You can't give that to kids." I said, "Well, I'm not giving it to anybody." I said, "I've got other purpose in purchasing this." The conversation ensued a little bit further. I asked him, I said, "How do you know so much about this?" He told me that he has an ailment that has caused him to be on prescription pills for a number of years, and he thought he would try something a little bit different. So he started taking kratom in the doses that he was said to use on the package. He said, "I got addicted, and I got addicted pretty bad." I asked him how long that took. He said 2 weeks. And then he said, "You know what?" He said, "Worse than how bad it was using it was when I decided I had to stop." I'm sitting here talking to this guy in a smoke shop. I'll just leave it at, he seemed like he'd been around the block. He was deeply concerned about what this guy in a suit was going to do with this product. Governor, I want to commend you for your swift action in all of this when being confronted by the health dangers that have become well known to all of us now as we go along. And we're learning as we go along as well. I appreciate especially you taking the next essential step beyond the public communication component of this, which is important, but that step of calling the legislature into a special session. We all know that that is not a matter undertaken lightly. But thank you for acting swiftly, calling them into session with a singular focus on confronting a public health crisis that is harming, addicting, and killing North Dakotans, young and old. My colleagues in the Office of the Attorney General and I are honored to stand with you today and with your administration to be working on this matter over the last weeks to address this crisis, and on behalf of North Dakota's law enforcement community, thank you for your response to an alarming situation. When I was announcing the crime statistics a few weeks ago, I mentioned that I feel that the crime statistics undervalue the intoxicants, I'll call them, that are out there, and they're causing grievous harm. And I mentioned kratom at that time. Kratom, rather. I'm just becoming aware of this as well, but we had just had the meeting prior to that. The crime lab people had mentioned it to us. We're moving swiftly, but Governor, you alone could take that action, calling the legislature into special session. We appreciate that you've done that. We look forward to that work as well. To the people of North Dakota, be aware that in the weeks ahead, the kratom industry and its lobbyists will be working overtime. They will be proposing alternatives that sound reasonable on the surface. They will present ideas that claim to solve the problem while preserving the very business model that has made this industry so profitable and so dangerous to the people of North Dakota and beyond. The legislature needs to hear from parents. They need to hear from educators, law enforcement officers and officials, and others that are interested in protecting the health of our citizens. We all have to keep in mind that if a proposal protects the industry's profits more than it protects our children and communities, it's not a solution, at least not for us. To the representatives of the legislature up here today, thank you for your rapid engagement on this important topic. My office and I stand ready to work closely with you and your colleagues as you craft the legislative response to what is absolutely a public health crisis. Our crime lab, our BCI, the Consumer Protection Division, and our General Counsel Division, who is so expert in crafting and working through legislation, are all at your disposal, and we look forward to the work ahead. Our work on this matter is not about preserving a marketplace for those who would do harm to North Dakota. It's about protecting the lives and the communities that we were all sworn to protect. At this time, it's an honor for me to introduce our Senate Majority Leader, Senator David Hogue.
Thank you, Governor Armstrong and Attorney General Wrigley, and good morning to all of you, and thank you for coming. In a little over 5 months, the Legislative Assembly will convene for its 70th regular session. As all of you know, under our Constitution, the legislature convenes every other year for approximately 4 months. However, both the governor and the Legislative Assembly have the ability to call themselves in for what's called a special session. And whenever we begin a discussion of special sessions, I always ask myself 2 related questions. First, can the matter wait until the regular session? Can we wait? And the second question is, what is the cost of waiting? What harm might come to the people of North Dakota? What loss in state resources might we incur if we wait till the regular session? And I think the governor and the attorney general have made a compelling case that we cannot wait when it comes to Kratom. We should not wait another 7 or 8 months for the legislature to convene, go through its bill hearing processes, and present the governor with a bill for consideration. The costs are far too high. Kratom has been marketed in our state and other states as a harmless herbal supplement, sold in convenience stores, in the smoke shops, next to the energy drinks. But the active compound stimulates the brain. In low doses, it stimulates, but in higher doses common on the shelves today, it sedates, intoxicates, and creates dependence. Kratom that is marketed today is not a supplement. It is an opioid-acting drug sold with no consistent age check or dosage standard. North Dakota, as the governor said, is not the first state to take up a partial or complete ban on Kratom. 10 other states have passed bans, with Tennessee and Kansas passing bans just last month. The trend across the country is clear, and it's moving in one direction. The federal government has moved as well. Last month, the DEA filed formal notice to place synthetic kratom into Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act, the same legal category as heroin. We're aware that a special session in early September will come at an inconvenient time for many legislators, particularly those in our ag community. But we're all proud and prepared as citizen legislators to travel back to Bismarck, roll up our sleeves, and make a careful examination of how we should regulate kratom. Leader LaFleur and I have formed a working group of legislators to work with Attorney General Wrigley, the governor's office, with the health department, and with others to make sure that we are drafting bills that will be available for other members of the legislature to view and to provide feedback before we go into special session on September 2nd. And so we've appointed Senator Michelle Axman and Representative Heinert to lead that working group. And at this time, I call on Representative Heinert.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Attorney General, for your leadership. I'm here because of my background in law enforcement, really is why I'm here, but I'm also a legislator representing the south side of Bismarck. And I have many stores in my district that are selling this stuff. I've done some research of my own. I have not purchased any. But I've done some research, and the Attorney General's right. Stores have this stuff now on sale. So the word is out that the synthetics are gonna get banned by DEA. So they're on sale. Seen many sales in the stores over the weekend when I was walking around, bouncing around between stores. But the bigger thing I think I need to say is we need to protect the people of North Dakota. And that's the legislative job. Our responsibility as legislators is to create laws that protect our people in North Dakota. So with that, I urge every legislator in this state in the next couple weeks to talk to your local law enforcement officers, talk to your local state's attorneys, talk to your local medical people who are seeing the effects of kratom. Not only synthetic, but natural kratom. Get the information from them, and then look at the bills that are designed and come in and vote to support putting this as a Schedule I narcotic in North Dakota to protect our people. Thank you.
So about 3 weeks ago, Chris Joseph, my attorney, or my lawyer, comes in and says that Mark Hardy with the Pharmaceutical Board is issuing wants to do an emergency order that's in line with the DEA on kratom. And legitimately, guys, that's the first time I'd ever heard of this stuff. So I apologize for not knowing those bills were in the legislative session. About 3 days later, Drew calls me and tells me about this, and I call Connor, who's my staffer that does all my HHS stuff, and we get a bunch of people together, and I start learning a tremendous amount about the health impacts of this stuff. And then I started thinking about how legally this would actually work. We can do the pharmaceutical order. I can issue an executive order. But eventually, if we're going to do this, we need tools that law enforcement can actually enforce. And doing nothing is not an option. Creating a legal gray area all across the state of North Dakota for the pendency of many, many months while we wait for the legislature to come in, pass a bill without an emergency clause that doesn't go into effect until next August 1st is an untenable option for me. Somebody might ask if this is an overreaction. I was a criminal defense attorney when meth blew up in the early 2000s in both the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state. I've spent my entire political career dealing with opioids and fentanyl and the massive amount of proliferation and addiction that is just, quite frankly, a scourge on our society. So I'm willing to overreact. That's the short version. I'm willing to overreact. I'm willing to bring people in and overreact. We have 23 deaths for a substance that has absolutely no regulation and can be sold legally. And by the way, I'm fairly certain everybody here is aware, once you make something illegal, that doesn't mean, taking it out of a shelf doesn't take it out of circulation. Turns out the drug industry has been around a lot longer and will continue to be around after that. We need to make sure that we have statutory law that protects and allows for enforcement from local county sheriffs, city police departments, BCI, highway patrol, and everybody up and across the board. We have Mark Hardy and Sherry Adams, our state health officer, and obviously Attorney General Wrigley and the legislators here, and now we'll open up for questions.
Why is this issue arising now, Governor Armstrong, when you said you learned of this just a short time ago? What was the catalyst?
The DEA, well, the catalyst for me was Chris Joseph walking in telling me Mark Hardy was going to issue a pharmaceutical order that is consistent with the DEA putting it on the Schedule I on August 1st. So, that's, structurally speaking, that's how this came to my attention, and I'm like, well, I've been around this long enough to know that if the DEA is doing that, it's a big deal, and then we started consuming every piece of information we could consume on that. So that's how it triggered for me.
Does the Military Gallery Museum construction fundraising problems have anything to do with this?
No. Quite frankly, just to be honest, if I was going to call them in for that, I wouldn't have wasted 2 months of construction time.
Will that be addressed during the special session?
That is, the downside, I hope it is. I hope at least some temporary patches. I think the least tenable solution is an empty hole in the Capitol grounds. But if it's not, and we ban both, if we ban kratom, we will have had a very successful interim legislative session.
What about other topics that might arise, like another stab at free school meals?
Turns out, once I call them in, Jack, it's like letting your children go off to college. I no longer have control. They will set up a, I mean, these are questions, I think, from Majority Leader LaFleur and Majority Leader Senator Hope. Yeah.
What's the question, Jack?
What about other topics that might come up? Are you going to restrict the bills that lawmakers can bring forward to the Delayed Bills Committee? Would you want to see another free school meals bill in light of the measure that's on the ballot?
Well, we're going to follow the procedure that we followed in the previous special session that related to the rural health transformation. And essentially that process was the legislative management, which are legislators who have been elected by their peers to serve on legislative management will serve as a delayed bills committee. And we will give individual legislators who want an opportunity to be heard on a specific subject unrelated to Kratom, an opportunity to present that to legislative management. And if legislative management votes to introduce the bill, it will be introduced.
One more question. How did you arrive at the date for the special session to begin September 7th, this Labor Day?
I think it was a collaboration between the governor's office and the legislature. We chose September 2nd because...
Second or seventh?
Second.
Second. Okay.
Because for a number of reasons. We wanted to act sooner than Labor Day. But there are also a number of conferences that are going on that conflict with a large number of legislators. There's a CSG down in Minneapolis. There's the Hunt Keene Institute that's coming here to Bismarck. And so we picked September 2nd because it represents an avoidance of the most number of conflicts.
Also, my executive order expires on September 5th.
Is it a 3-day session you plan?
Yes.
Okay.
A question for the committee that's going to be looking at the working group. There are multiple lawmakers that use Kratom in the legislature. Are they going to be involved with this working group? Are they going to be involved in this legislation? Because they have a personal use aspect, useful experience.
We haven't selected all the members of that committee. However, as I said, Senator Axman and Representative Heinert will be leading that.
Will people with personal use, would that be welcome to the committee?
Well, that won't be a criteria whether they use or not. But obviously, we're a tight group, and we last night there was 42 of us talking, and so we'll have access to one another's experiences about Kratom.
I think a lot of different viewpoints about particularly the non-synthetic Kratom will be coming between now and September 2nd. Yeah.
In terms of, and this is for anybody, but in terms of the criminalization of the drugs, what are we looking at? Are we talking about a Class A misdemeanor with an escalation clause like meth?
So meth is not a Class A misdemeanor.
Well, it depends on the quantity.
Yeah, I can do the brief version of that. I used to do this. When the DEA and the Pharmacy Board make it a Schedule 1 narcotic or a Schedule 1 drug, essentially it's a Class B felony. That's where Schedule 1 sits. Now, you do weights, you do all of that. I have made it known to everybody that I believe there should at least be a misdemeanor trapdoor in this. I'm not particularly interested in making an 18-year-old kid who's addicted to a product that was legal a month ago a felon for the rest of his life without any options for moving up and down. But that is exactly the kind of talk, like, I've learned a lot about the health benefits of this, but there's a reason the AG is up here, there's a reason Sheriff Heinert's up here, because you want to be able to structure this in a way that's reasonable, that is a massive deterrent, but that also fits into our criminal code in a way that we do it. Because our criminal code isn't the same as Minnesota's or Montana's or Florida's or Wisconsin, who has also banned Kratom. And so you can do a DEA order, but that doesn't allow a sheriff in Williams County or Montreal County to really enforce it, because just telling you, federal law enforcement is not going to do possession cases of kratom. So we have to make sure we get it. My executive order for all kratom is an infraction up until it expires on September 5th. So that's where we're at now. The banning of the sale goes into effect now, but we have to create a law that's durable and that can be prosecutable. Because with just the pharmaceutical order, I don't think you can actually prosecute it, even though you've moved it to a Schedule 1, which is a terrible place to put our law enforcement. Terrible place to put our law enforcement. Yeah.
What kind of input have you received from the state's medical professionals or officials?
Scary input.
When did this input start happening, and what kind of communications?
Essentially, the day I found out that the pharmacy board wanted to mirror a DEA order, and then we've had several meetings and figuring out where it's at. Like the question on whether synthesized kratom is actually different than naturally occurring kratom or just higher potency. My medical experts tell me there is no difference. It's just a potency issue, which means when you take synthetics off the market, the easy way to account for that is by taking more of the naturally occurring. And so
That pisses me off.
we've had a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
I'll also tell you, I've had numerous people reach out to me just since last week with a niece who's addicted to this stuff. Different people who are like, thank you for doing this. This stuff is really, really bad.
And that's what we hear, hearing after hearing after hearing,
Time and time again.
All of a sudden,
because of
brought
708.
into the public kind of eye, but there were 2 bills last session on this. What has allowed kratom, if it's been this dangerous since 2019, to all of a sudden become prominent enough to warrant action?
Well, I think whenever something new is on the market and ends up in these types of scenarios, I love government. Government is not always the quickest to respond. I didn't know those existed. When you're a Republican governor from a conservative state, beating up on the federal government's like the easiest thing in the world to do. But the DEA has made this. That is really kind of, I think, what triggered everything. And when the DEA is doing this and telling you this is where they're going to that level, it helps raise the attention to it. And it's actually a little shocking to me. There's not more of there hasn't been more of a historical coordinated movement just from the anecdotal evidence that was coming out. But we know about it now, and we're going to respond to it.
Should have been banned a long time ago.
Should never fucking enter the market.
Yeah. Sherry, thank you for that question.
Yes, so I guess I'm not as tall. You're absolutely correct. There's a lot of individuals that have already gone down that path of being addicted, and quite honestly, not just to the 7-OH, to all the different products that are out there. Obviously, if you have a loved one that is in crisis or such, you can automatically call that 988 number or the 211 number. That gets you that emergency number and can connect them with some resources. On the other side of that, we can have them call I have to look at the number of the health department, the behavioral health department. They have resources there as well. And we can get that number to you, but the number during the week is 328-8908. But again, if they're in crisis, the better avenue is to go ahead and call 988. Just one more little thing to partner to the last question. I think one of the other reasons that this is becoming escalated is more data is coming out, more people are using it, and we're seeing more and more lives lost, as well as more and more people using these products. So I think it's a good time to take the step in to try to get this totally off the market, because we are just continuing to see those numbers continuing to climb.
Because they're not testing for 708.
Senator, why wasn't this chosen to be studied? That bill that passed last year, we could have studied this during the interim. Why was it chosen not to be studied?
Well, I think the governor has answered it, and I'll answer it as well. The issue has been escalated for the past year. On our Zoom call last night, we were aware that the city of Ray had banned kratom.
They didn't ban kratom.
In northwest North Dakota.
They banned
I
synthetics.
asked the senator that represents that area to do an investigation, and he did. And he came back and he found out that the people in Ray and the community leaders there had identified kratom as the primary cause of a death in that small community.
It was
So,
7-OH.
To answer your question,
Nope.
Michael, as we get more facts and become more aware, we act. And that's just the natural progression of legislation or any government response to crisis.
The testing has really only been done as a matter of course since 2025. The ability to test is 2019.
It hadn't
and
even been
started,
consistently
if
tested
anybody
since
remembers,
2025,
basically
though, in
lost 2
deaths.
years right
Yep.
after that occurred. So when you start finding out the health effects of this stuff, it takes time to accumulate the data. I mean, these numbers are since 2025. I mean, this is a real problem, and it's going to get worse, if not better, if we don't do something.
Do the legislative leaders have any concerns about gathering all the lawmakers in such a short time during the summer season and a vacation holiday looming?
Actually, I don't. If you look at, this is going to be the third special session that Leader Hogan and I have been leaders. And the minimum amount of time that you can have for a legislative session is 3 days. And that's our goal here. If you look at the track record of the last 2 special sessions, you see very high attendance. And so I have a great deal of confidence that legislators will respond to the call and be here on September 2nd.
One more question, Mike. Is this just a further proof that North Dakota should move to annual sessions, given responses to important court opinions,
It's like we should almost show the Ray hearing.
addressing
Yeah.
crises, as the board points out, such as this, COVID spending, for instance, as well?
Because they literally just mirrored the federal DEA.
It is, but it's
Yeah.
not.
They left Leaf alone.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of confidence that what
It's
we've
like-
done is good
Oh,
work. If
man.
you remember, we did 1,100
How did these people go to this
1,100
state
bills and resolutions
and not understand
in
simple things?
74 days. And we put out a budget of $20 billion. I think it's done a remarkable, the legislature's done a remarkable job in so little time. So at this point, I think it's working well.
Governors with annual sessions call special sessions a lot. We just had a session for rural health transportation. We didn't know about this annual or biannual wouldn't have mattered. I'd be doing the same thing right now. So.
Attorney General Wrigley, people I've been talking to at smoke shops, I'm worried that a snap ban on kratom, the natural supplement, and 7-OH all together at once could lead to more illicit drug use, fentanyl use. Is your office worried about that as law enforcement? How do you plan on tackling that?
I mean, those things, those eventualities are possible. You'd be smarter than the rest of us if you know that way will lead onto way, will lead onto that way, and how it's going to branch off.
No, Keith, they're going to try to ban kratom
Exactly right. We've identified a
because of
health crisis.
7-OH.
He's dealing with it in a head-on
They signed an
fashion,
emergency executive order.
including calling the legislature
Yeah.
back into special session for the purpose of dealing with that in real time. We've got to address that on the front side. What someone might do, what might lead them to other addictions and going in other directions, we have no way to know. Those laws are in place and will continue to be enforced. And one of the most important things, a couple of the most important things that are going to happen, the public information on this is going to go sky high in the next 3 days, all across the North Dakota Plains, because of the work that all of you are doing in covering this important story. And number two, people who need those addiction services are going to have more cause to come into contact with those services. The most important thing, I've said this, I've been a prosecutor for 30-some years. The most important thing for drug trafficking that can happen is demand reduction. It's the most important thing that there is. Public information on these products is going to assist demand reduction. Now, I wasn't inclined to take it before I walked into that place, but I'm telling you, his reaction was something, if he wouldn't lose his job, I would have asked him to come here and speak to the issue. And it wasn't just because of the fact that he has himself become addicted. It was clear to me it was because of the people that were coming in. He said, you can't believe how much of this stuff we sell. And looking at the shelf and how much they had out there, I could believe how much they sell. So it's being dealt with squarely. I can't tell you how much. When the governor and I met a couple times on this topic, and he called the last time around, like an hour and a half later, you can always tell when the governor has one of his light bulb moments, and he had one. I can sense it in his voice. And he just said, Drew, I'm calling him in a special session. We know how dangerous it is. We can't, just sort of the timeline he just laid out. He said, we can't wait around that long. He said, I'm going to call him in a special session. If he'd been standing there, I'd have kissed him probably. We appreciate that about our governor. He's a problem solver. He wants to address them. So this is a problem that's got to be dealt with. And we're going to deal with it, and all the expertise up here and elsewhere that we can grab. But saying that it might lead somebody to do some other thing that is itself a crisis is not a reason not to address the issue. We've got to address this, continue to deal with that, be happy about a public information campaign that's going to assist dramatically, and then get people the resources that they need to help break free of the addiction of kratom.
Leader Polk, where will the legislation come from? In the 3-day session, can we expect legislative management to be drafting a bill between now and then?
One of the reasons that we've got Senator Axman involved is she was working on several kratom bills, expecting to introduce them in the regular session. She's got bill drafts ready, and so that's the reason she's going to be part of that working group, because she's engaged the medical community in the Bismarck-Mandan area. She's been engaged with parents and with others, and so she's going to be the lead, at least from the Senate's perspective. And so, thanks to her foresight, we've got a running start on this issue.
If the number one concern is they're going to get addicted to something else, I'm okay with that. I mean, like, if that's the biggest concern. By the way, they also have 30 days and a special session to make the case. But if the concern is we're selling this highly addictive product, and if you take it away, they're going to be addicted to something else, then we'll deal with that as it moves forward.
When Senator Axman talked about the proposal, she will bring forward.
Thank you. My original proposal is a complete ban on both kratom, 7-OH, and additional synthetics. However, when we meet as a committee and go through testimony, I think that'll be up to the full legislative body and those who come to provide testimony in favor or opposed to where we land as a final solution.
Do we have a timeline on the delayed bills committee on when that might be meeting? Has that been discussed?
I would guess sometime before September 2nd.
Sometime before. No, we're going to actually, that's a great question, Grant. We're going to be discussing that today.
Yeah.
How much money is going to be needed to winterize the military gallery?
I don't have that answer in front of me. I know we have some data at some point in time that we can figure out. I don't have that answer in front of me.
So that the military gallery funding is officially not a part of the special session at this point?
It's not the reason I am calling the special session. So let's walk through a couple practicalities of the way this works. After COVID, the legislature passed a law that said any emergency health order from the governor is only good for 30 days. Then either the legislature or the governor could call them back in within 30 days. If nothing would happen, I would have to re-up the order every 30 days. This might sound different, but I don't think I should have that power by myself. I don't. This is taking something that is legally sold all across the state of North Dakota, and also the only thing I can do with that health order is make it an infraction. I think this warrants a more serious thing. Now, if the legislature calls himself in order for the bill to become effective immediately, it has to pass by a 2/3 majority. It can pass by a simple majority, but in order to be effective immediately, it has to have 2/3. Otherwise, you have to wait 90 days. Obviously, the intent of the legislation that was passed was that they didn't want executive orders to span time over time. So, given that, I figured the easiest way to do it is bring them in before the first executive order that I signed this morning expires. Combine that with the fact that we have a DEA order and a pharmaceutical order that actually creates a Schedule I drug without any real enforcement authority for law enforcement prosecutors to deal with. There is no real mechanism to do any of those things without bringing the legislature in. Now, the downside and the potential plus side for me calling them in is once they are in, when I call them in, they can introduce whatever they want, provided it gets through the Delayed Bills Committee. And they can deal with the military museum, they can deal with school lunches if it gets through delayed bills, they can deal with wherever that occurs. But that is going to be up to the legislature to determine where they're at. I think the focus on Kratom is going to be very important. I think this is the type of issue that will have less support for legalization when it's the only game in town. When people aren't running to a natural resources hearing, they're not running to an appropriations hearing, they're not running somewhere else. I think this is a real conversation that needs to have, and I think when everybody's focused on that is there. But my personal opinion, which I have no actual direct say over, if there's something else, military museum or otherwise, the legislature thinks is timely and needs to be dealt with, they should do it. If they're here, they should do it. They're fairly comfortable. They're fairly comfortable and competent people. Anything else? Anything else from anybody else? Thank you all. Thank you.
We're going to need all Kratom advocates to activate for North Dakota. So y'all be on the lookout for when the AKA puts out call to action or something.
Yeah.
This is bullshit.
And there's no telling how many states might follow this. But I mean, hopefully they'll listen.
We need RFK on this. This is a Governor DeWine 2.0.
Yeah. But I mean, so he said first week, September 2nd, I think is what he said. So be ready to testify.
Yeah, for the special session or whatever.
Yeah. The more people they hear from, the more they'll understand.
Like the DEA announcement has nothing to do with whole leaf at all.
But again, they're conflating the two.
Yeah, conflating the two, and like John Shinholzer says, throwing the baby out with bathwater.
Yep.
Because that fuck-ass 70H.
Yep. And it's like time and time and time and time again, we keep hearing, well, you know, I've gotten contacted by all these people since we made this. And it's like they're all attributing it to Kratom. And
Yeah.
it's all 70H. Like
Yeah.
these people are getting, you know, spending thousands of dollars. When we were watching this live, there was a lady saying that her son had spent $1,200 a week on 70H. And he was almost homeless. And she was just so glad they were doing this. But
Was it a week or a month? It was one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the death that they're talking about, like there's a recent death. That's why, you know, Williston, North Dakota, and Ray did their ordinance where they banned the synthetics. They didn't touch the natural leaf at all. We were at that hearing. I testified there.
Yep, that was when your grandbaby was born.
No. This is most recent. Well, yeah, the last year when North Dakota. Yeah, I testified at the state legislature, you know, when my grandbaby was born, but the recent one in Ray, North Dakota.
It's just, they even write out all the paperwork and everything from the DEA in Ray.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Okay, well, we're going to go.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, we got to go.
All right. Everybody have a good day.